Hi friends, I want to start today with a question. And I don't want you to answer it out loud. I want you to answer it somewhere deeper than that. Somewhere in the place where you keep the things you don't say. When you woke up this morning, before the noise, before the day got its hands on you, what was the first thing you said to yourself? Take a moment, think back. Think back. What was the very first thought that moved through your mind when consciousness returned and you realized another day had arrived? For most people, and I know this because I've asked thousands of people this exact question. For most people, the first thought sounds something like this. Already? I'm so tired. Or, I don't want to do this today. Or, I have too much to deal with. Or perhaps the quietest and most devastating one of all. Nothing. Just a dull, grey, automatic shuffle from sleep into waking with no intention, no direction, no sense that this particular morning matters any more than the last one did. And then we wonder why by 10 o'clock we feel like we are already behind. By noon we feel like the day is working against us. By evening we're exhausted in a way that has nothing to do with what we did and everything to do with how we started. Your morning is not just a time of day. Your morning is a doorway. And every single day of your life, you walk through that doorway and you choose, consciously or not, intentionally or by default, what you carry through it, what story you step into, what version of yourself you agree to be for the next 16 hours. And today, I am going to give 5 things. 5 sentences, 5 pieces of truth so simple that a child could understand them, and so powerful that they have the capacity to completely transform the trajectory of your life. If you say them with meaning every single morning and then go out and live like you believe them. These are not affirmations in the soft, passive sense of that word. These are not things you whisper into a mirror, hoping the universe will handle the rest. These are declarations. These are war cries. These are the things that the strongest, most intentional, most alive version of you needs to hear from the only voice that can truly reach the inside of your chest, your own. But before I give you the 5 things, I need to tell you a story. Because if you understand where these 5 things come from, what they were born out of, what suffering and searching and stumbling produced them, then when I give them to you, they won't just be words. They'll be medicine. And you'll know exactly what wound they're meant to heal. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Thomas. Thomas was the kind of person people described as dependable. And I want you to hear that word the way it was meant, as a compliment. But also hear the shadow in it. Because dependable for Thomas had become a cage. Thomas was 44 years old. He had a good job. Not a great job, a good one. He had a house, a car, a routine so well worn you could see the grooves in it. He woke up at 6:45 every morning because that's when the alarm went off. He drank the same coffee from the same mug. He drove the same route. He ate lunch at his desk. He came home tired. He watched television. He went to bed. And the next morning, he did it again. Thomas had not always been this way. There was a version of Thomas, somewhere back in his 30s, who had been different. Hungry, full of plans. He had wanted to start a business. A small one, modest even, a landscaping company because he loved working with his hands and he loved being outside. And he had this vision, vivid and detailed, of something he had built with his own effort. He had a business plan, handwritten, in a green notebook. And then life happened the way it happens. A medical bill, a family obligation, a boss who offered a raise at exactly the moment Thomas was about to hand in his notice. And the green notebook went into a drawer. And the drawer got closed and 1 year became 5, became 10. And somewhere in the becoming, Thomas forgot he had ever been the kind of person who kept a green notebook. When Thomas was 44, his teenage daughter came home from school one day. And she was upset, really upset. The kind of upset that teenagers try to hide because they're not sure they're allowed to feel that much. And Thomas asked her what was wrong. And she told him her teacher had asked the class what their dream was, what they wanted to be, what they were going to do with their one wild and precious life. And she had sat there in that classroom and she could not think of a single answer. Not because she wasn't bright, she was extremely bright. But because somewhere in her 14 years of watching her father be dependable, she had absorbed the lesson that dreams were the kind of thing other people had, not people like them. not people from their street, their budget, their particular brand of ordinary. She had looked at her blank paper and she had felt ashamed, or Thomas told me that when his daughter said that, he felt something move in his chest that he had not felt in over a decade, like something cracked open. He said it was the most painful thing he had ever heard, not because it was cruel, but because he recognized it. He had taught her that, not with words, with his life. With 14 years of watching him come home from the good not great job and sit in front of the television and never once reach for the thing that made his eyes different, he went to his office that night. He found the drawer. He found the green notebook. Good. And he sat down at his desk and he did something he had not done in years. He talked to himself out loud. He said, and he told me this the way people tell you things they've never told anyone carefully, like the words are still fragile. He said, I told myself the truth. For the first time in a very long time. I told myself what I actually was, what I actually had, what I could actually do, and what I was going to choose. And it changed everything. The business Thomas built from that green notebook, it now employs 23 people. His daughter, at 21, is studying environmental design. And she keeps a notebook on her desk. It is yellow. ... The morning conversation changed everything. So let's talk about morning. Let's really talk about it. Because I think we fundamentally misunderstand what morning is and what it's for. We treat morning like a loading screen, the waiting period before the real content of the day begins. We hit snooze because we want more of the nothing that came before. We reach for our phones within the first 2 minutes. Studies say the average person checks their phone within 3 minutes of waking. And we immediately hand the first, freshest, most open moments of our consciousness to someone else's agenda, someone else's news, someone else's news, someone else's highlight reel, someone else's outrage. We flood the clear, quiet water of the morning mind with noise before we've had a chance to hear ourselves think. And then we wonder why we feel reactive all day. Why we feel like we're responding to the world rather than shaping it. Why by lunchtime we feel like we've already lost something we can't quite name. The morning is not a loading screen. The morning is the meeting. The morning is the meeting, the most important meeting of your, the one that determines the quality of every other meeting, every other conversation, every other decision that follows, and the meeting is with yourself. But now, here's what's interesting about the way the human brain works in the morning. For a window of time, roughly the first 30 to 60 minutes after waking, your brain is in a state that is uniquely receptive to suggestion. The analytical, critical, skeptical part of your brain, the part that says that's unrealistic and who do you think you are and you've tried this before, that part is still warming up. It hasn't fully come online yet, which means the morning is the one time of day when the things you say to yourself have the shortest path to the deepest parts of you. The morning is when the drawbridge is down and the gates are open, and what you walk through them will land directly in the part of you that makes decisions, forms habits, and assigns meaning to experience. Thought that is extraordinary. That is a gift, and almost no one is using it. We are using that sacred window to absorb anxiety from our phones and drag ourselves into the day with a posture of reluctance and a mood of obligation. We are wasting the most neurologically fertile moments of the entire day on things that diminish us. Not anymore. Because here are the 5 things. Here are the 5 sentences that will change your mornings, and by changing your mornings, will change your life. Not because they are magic, because they are true. And speaking truth to yourself with intention, consistency, and belief is one of the most powerful acts available to a human being. The first thing to tell yourself every morning is this: I am still here. I know what you're thinking. That sounds too simple. That sounds like the beginning of something, not the whole thing. But stay with me, because those 3 words, spoken with full awareness of what they mean, are more powerful than almost anything else you will say today. I am still here. You woke up. That is not nothing. I want you to hear that and feel it and not let your brain immediately dismiss it as obvious. Funk, because the way most of us treat our mornings, you would think that waking up is a guarantee, a given, something so automatic and certain that it barely warrants acknowledgement. It is not. There are people who went to sleep last night with plans for today who are not here. There are people who had alarms set that won't wake them. There are families around the world this morning for whom today began with loss instead of possibility. And you You specifically, you reading this, you listening to this, you are still here. Your heart beat all night long without you asking it to. Your lungs breathed. Your body, with all its imperfections and complaints and the where it's accumulated, kept you alive through the darkness and delivered you to this morning. That is an act of grace, and it deserves recognition. But I am still here means more than just the physical fact of survival. It means something about your story. It means that whatever you faced yesterday, whatever disappointment, whatever failure, whatever grief, whatever conversation that went wrong, whatever dream that got knocked sideways, you came through it. You are still here. The story is not over. The final chapter hasn't been written. There are still pages ahead of you, and what goes on those pages is not yet determined. I want to tell you about a woman named Sarah. Sarah was a high school cross-country runner. And I mean a runner in the truest sense. Not just athletically, but in her identity, in her soul, in the way she understood herself. Running was the language she used to communicate with the world and with herself. When she was happy, she ran. When she was stressed, she ran. When she needed to think, she ran. Her legs were her truest self that at 17, Sarah was in a car accident. The details don't matter. What matters is that she woke up in a hospital bed and was told, by a doctor who was kind but direct, as doctors sometimes have to be, that she might never run competitively again. The damage to her knee was significant. The recovery, even optimistically, was 18 months. The odds of returning to competition at her previous level were, the doctor said, low. Told me that she lay in that hospital bed for 3 days without saying a single word that she meant. She said the right things to visitors. She smiled at the right moments. And at night, when everyone went home, she stared at the ceiling and felt the terrifying absence of the thing that had always told her who she was. On the fourth morning, her coach, a woman in her 50s who had been coaching for 20 years and had seen many things, came to visit. And she didn't bring flowers, and she didn't speak in the soft, cushioned way that people speak to the injured. She sat down in the chair next to the bed and she looked at Sarah and she said 3 words, "You're still here." And Sarah started crying. Not sad crying, not sad crying, the other kind. The kind that comes when someone says the exact true thing at the exact right moment, and it lands somewhere so deep and right that the body responds before the mind can. Because in those 3 days of ceiling staring, Sarah had been telling herself a different story. She had been telling herself, it's over. The real me is gone. The me that matters. The runner, she's done. And her coach, without knowing the specific language of Sarah's private darkness, had walked directly into it with flashlight. Got me into it with a flashlight. You still here. Spent 18 months in recovery. It was not smooth or linear or cinematic. It was painful and frustrating. And there were weeks when the progress was invisible and the doubt was loud. She came back to running at 19, not at her previous level, at a higher. She went on to compete in college, then coached high school cross country for a decade and a half. She has told the story of those 3 words to hundreds of young athletes. She told me, every morning before I run now, I say it, even on the days I feel great, maybe especially on those days. Because I know what it means to face the possibility of not being here, and I never want to take you for granted again. I'm still here. Say it tomorrow morning. Say it like it's the most important true thing, because it is. Say it before the phone, before the coffee, before the noise. Open your eyes and let the first conscious thing you feel be gratitude. Not performed gratitude, real, in your chest gratitude for the fact that you are alive and the story continues and today is full of things that are still possible. The second thing to tell yourself every morning is this: I am not my yesterday. This one needs to be unpacked carefully because it is deeper than it appears and its implications are wider than you might initially think. We carry our past with us everywhere. That's not entirely a bad thing. Our experiences teach us, shape us, give us wisdom and context and the knowledge of what we've survived. But we make a critical error when we allow our past to also serve as our ceiling. When we allow who we were yesterday, what we did do, how we performed, how we behaved, how we failed to define the absolute outer limit of who we are allowed to be today. Your brain, bless it, is designed to do this. It is designed to use past evidence to predict future outcomes. It's an efficiency mechanism. It looks at your history and says, based on all available data, this is likely to continue. And in many cases, that's useful. In many cases, pattern recognition keeps you safe. But when the pattern you're recognizing is a pattern of limitation, When the data your brain is using to predict your future is composed primarily of your failures, your fears, your worst moments, your lowest days, then the efficiency mechanism becomes a prison. I am not my yesterday is the key that opens that prison. Not by denying the past, not by pretending it didn't happen, but by asserting firmly out loud in the clear morning air that you are not a fixed object. You are not a finished product. You're a process, a becoming. And whatever yesterday was, today is a new equation. Dot, let me tell you about a man named James. James had a drinking problem for 11 years. I'm not going to soften that or dress it up because James himself doesn't dress it up. He lost a marriage. He lost a job he loved. A position as a high school history teacher that he had worked 7 years to earn. He lost years. Years that, even sober, you look back at through a kind of blurred lens. Unable to fully account for what was spent, James got sober when he was 38 years old. And getting sober, he told me, was not the hardest part. The hardest part was what came after, because every morning he woke up and the first thing his mind did, before anything, was run the film. The marriage, the classroom he was escorted out of. The specific faces of the specific people he had let down. And the film said, this is who you are. This is the sum of you. 11 years of evidence right there on the screen behind your eyes. Before the day has even started, he had a counselor who gave him a practice. She said, every morning, before your feet hit the floor, I want you to say out loud, I am not my yesterday. She told him it would feel false at first. It would feel like a lie. She told him to say it anyway. But that felt like a lie for 3 months. He said it anyway. At around the 4-month mark, something shifted. Not dramatically, not like a movie moment. More like the difference between a door that sticks and a door that swings. The words started to land differently. Started to feel less like a contradiction of the evidence and more like an instruction. A direction. A daily reorientation of the compass. I am not my yesterday is not a denial of accountability. James is fiercely accountable for what he did. He made amends where amends could be made. He carried the weight of what his past cost the people he loved. But he refused, day by day, morning by morning, to let accountability become identity, to let what he had done become all that he was. Today, James is 51 years old. He teaches history at a different high school. He has been sober for 13 years. He mentors young men with addiction. And every single morning of those 13 years before his feet have hit the floor, he has said those 5 words that he told me. I say it not because my yesterday doesn't matter. I say it because today matters more. I am not my yesterday, pity. Tomorrow morning when the film starts, and it will start, when the brain begins its habitual showing of the evidence of your inadequacy, your failures, your lowest moments, stop it. Not by fighting it, by replacing it, replacing it. Look at the ceiling, or the window, or the face of whoever is sleeping beside you and say, I am not my yesterday. And then get up and prove it. The third thing to tell yourself every morning is this. Someone needs what I have. This one is different from the first two. The first two are inward facing. They are about your survival, your continuity, your release from the past. This third one faces outward. And I believe, with everything I've learned about human psychology and human purpose, that the outward turn is where the deepest healing and the greatest power lie, ... Because here is something I know about you. Here is something I know about every person who feels stuck or lost or small or like the effort of their life doesn't amount to enough. The pain of that feeling is almost never about what you don't have. It is almost always about what you don't feel you're giving. We are not designed for self-sufficiency. We are not built to be islands. Our deepest neurological rewards, the chemicals of joy and meaning and belonging, are triggered not primarily by receiving, but by giving, by mattering. By having the experience, however brief, of being the person that someone else needed at the right moment. And one of the most damaging lies that a bad morning tells you is this: you don't have anything to offer. The lie says, you're too ordinary, too broken, too far behind, too young, too old, too damaged, too lost. The lie says, wait until you fixed yourself before you start trying to help anyone else. Get your own life together first. You're in no position to offer anything, and so people wait. They wait until they're healed enough, successful enough, certain enough. And while they're waiting, the thing they uniquely carry, the perspective that only their particular journey could produce, the strength that only their particular pain could forge, the wisdom that can only come from having been exactly where they've been, goes unshared. And someone who needed it goes without. Someone needs what I have is a declaration of purpose. It is a statement that says, I am not waiting until I'm perfect to be useful. I am useful now, as I am, with what I've got, with what I know, with what I've survived, right now. I want to tell you about a woman named Diana. Diana had struggled with anxiety since childhood. Not the kind of anxiety that is occasionally inconvenient, the kind that, at its worst, kept her inside for days, the kind that stood between her and every room full of people, the kind that told her, with absolute conviction, that she was too much and not enough simultaneously, and that the safest place in the world was the one where nobody could see her. For years, Diana treated her anxiety as the defining fact of her life, the thing that explained all the missed opportunities, all the pulled back connections, all the small retreats from the life she could see other people living. She was not resentful of those other people. Diana was, in fact, someone of extraordinary gentleness and compassion. She simply believed that she was someone to whom normal life did not fully apply. She started very tentatively an anonymous blog, not about anxiety specifically, about everyday things, small observations about the world. The way light falls through a particular window in the afternoon. The feeling of the first cold morning of autumn. Small, honest, beautifully written things that she published into what she expected was the void. 3 months after she started, she received an email. The email was from a young woman in another country who said that she had been reading the blog for weeks and that one specific entry about the particular relief of a Saturday when there is nowhere to be and no one expecting anything had made her feel for the first time in a long time that someone understood her life. That someone else knew what it was to find the ordinary world sometimes too loud and too much. That she had read that entry and cried and shown it to her mother and said, "See, someone else feels this." Diana told me she stared at that email for a long time. And then she did something she had not done in connection with her anxiety in years. She felt grateful for it, not for the suffering, but for what the suffering had given her. The specific, finely tuned sensitivity. The ability to notice small, true things. The vocabulary for a kind of interior life that many people live but few can articulate. Her wound had produced her gift. And someone in another country needed that gift. Someone needs what I have is the sentence that moves you out of your own orbit. It is the sentence that reminds you that you are not the center of your own story. You are a character in many stories. That your presence in the world has ripple effects you cannot trace. That the thing you might consider your most ordinary quality is to someone else a light in a dark room. You have something. Maybe it's a skill. Maybe it's a perspective. Maybe it is simply the fact that you have been through something hard and come out of it still able to stand. Maybe it is your kindness, your humor, your ability to listen without fixing. Maybe it is the thing you think everyone has but actually don't. Most of us consistently underestimate how unusual our own particular combination of qualities is. Tomorrow morning, say it before you decide. You're too broken to be useful. Someone needs what I have. And then spend the day with your eyes slightly more open to where that someone might be. The fourth thing to tell yourself every morning is this: I choose today. 2 words after that first one. The most important 2 words in the English language. I choose. I choose. Not today is happening to me. Not I have no choice but to face today. Not let's get through today. I choose today. This is about agency. About the radical, world-shifting act of deciding. And I mean really deciding. Not in the head, but in the chest. That your life is something you are actively choosing, not passively experiencing. Passively experiencing. I want to be careful. Because I know that some of you are living in circumstances that feel profoundly not chosen. Circumstances that were handed to you without your consent. By illness, by loss, by poverty, by history, by systems larger than your individual will. And I'm not standing here in the comfortable arrogance of someone telling you that every circumstance in your life is simply a matter of attitude. It's not. The world is not fair. There are real constraints, real injustices, real walls that take more than one person's choosing to dismantle. But here is what I know. Within whatever constraints exist, and there are always some for everyone, there is always a space where you have a choice A space between what happens to you and what happens to you and what you do with what happens to you. And in that space, even if it's small, even if it's narrow, even if it sometimes feels barely large enough to stand in that space you are sovereign. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps, who experienced perhaps the most complete stripping of human agency that the 20th century produced, wrote this, that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, the freedom to choose one's attitude, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. That is not a small thing. That is not a passive thing. That is the most active, most muscular, most fundamentally human thing there is. And on an ordinary Tuesday morning in an ordinary life, the exercise of that freedom looks like opening your eyes and saying, I choose today. I choose to be here. I choose to bring my best, not my perfect, not my effortless, my best, to whatever this day holds. I choose to treat the people I encounter with dignity. I choose to do the work. I choose to face the difficulty without letting it define my direction. I choose to be the author and not just the character. Let me tell you about a man named Robert. Robert had every external reason to give up. He grew up in the foster care system, moved through 8 different homes before he was 16. He aged out of care at 18, with no family safety net, no money, and a transcript that reflected years of disrupted schooling in schools that were not resourced to handle the particular kind of damage that insecure attachment produces in a child. He had been told explicitly by a caseworker when he was 14 that the statistics for kids like him were not encouraging. He slept in his car for 4 months at 19. He worked at a gas station. He ate convenience store food and washed up in the bathroom before his shifts so nobody would know. And every morning in that car, in whatever parking lot he'd found for the night, before he started the engine, Robert says he did one thing. He said, I choose today. He'd started doing it because he'd read it somewhere. He couldn't remember where. And he'd written it on a piece of paper that he kept on the dashboard. 3 words. On a crumpled piece of paper taped to a dashboard in a car that was home. He told me, it wasn't spiritual for me at first. It wasn't even hopeful. It was just true. There was a version of me that could let the circumstances be the end of the story. And there was a version of me that could choose to get up and try one more time. And every morning I had to pick which version showed up. And every morning I picked the second one. Not because I was sure it would work. Because I was sure that the first one wasn't acceptable to me. Robert is now 43 years old. He holds a master's degree in social work. Sure. He runs an organization that provides support and mentorship to young men aging out of the foster care system. He keeps that piece of paper, the original one from the dashboard, crumpled and faded, in his wallet. He showed it to me. 3 words, barely legible now, from years of folding and unfolding. I choose today. The choosing is not passive. I need to say that again because we sometimes mistake intention for action. Saying I choose today is not the same as choosing today. It's not the same as choosing. The words are the declaration, the internal alignment of the compass. But the choosing is lived out in every small decision that follows. Every time you pick the harder right thing over the easier comfortable thing. Every time you respond instead of react. Every time you do the work when nobody is watching. Every time you treat someone with the kindness that your mood didn't suggest. Every time you pull back from the spiral and return to the present. That's the choosing. That's the exercise of the freedom that cannot be taken, say, tomorrow morning. Before anything else has been decided, before the day has had a chance to present its conditions, look at the ceiling and say, I choose today, and mean it. And then go out and make the choices that prove you meant it. The 5th thing, the last one, the one I've been building toward, the one that holds the other 4 together. The 5th thing to tell yourself every morning is this. I am becoming, not I am, not I will be, I am becoming. Because the most dangerous illusion that a fixed mindset produces is the idea that you are a finished product. That who you are right now, this version of you, with these fears and these habits and these limitations, is the final version, the complete edition. And if that version is not enough, not successful enough, not happy enough, not healed enough, not good enough, then you are simply someone who is not enough. And that's the end. I am becoming refuses that. I am becoming is a debt. I am becoming is a declaration that the process is not over, that you are not done, that the caterpillar is not a failed butterfly, It is a butterfly in process. And the process, while sometimes dark and disorienting and claustrophobic, is exactly what is required for the wings. There is a concept in Japanese culture called kaizen. It means continuous improvement. Small incremental daily improvement, not transformation in great dramatic leaps. Improvement in tiny, consistent, patient steps. And the power of Kaizen is not any individual step, it's the direction, not how fast you're moving. Which way you're facing? I am becoming is your Kaizen declaration. Declaration. It says, I am not where I want to be yet. And that's okay. Because I am moving. I am in process. I am building. I am not a fixed point. I am a direction. And the direction is forward. Let me tell you one final story. And this one I tell carefully because it is the most important one. And I want you to carry it with you for a very long time. There was a girl named Mia who grew up being told in 100 different ways that she was ordinary. Not cruelly, not maliciously, by people who loved her in the way they knew how. Her parents were quiet people, careful people, people for whom safety and predictability were the highest values because they had known what it was to not have them. And so Mia grew up safe and careful and very, very ordinary. She made ordinary grades. She took an ordinary job. She had ordinary relationships. She dressed in a way that said, "Please don't look at me too hard." She moved through the world at a volume just below noticeable. And for a long time, Mia told herself that ordinary was fine. That ordinary was fine. That ordinary was responsible. That the people who wanted extraordinary were probably reckless and a little foolish and definitely going to be disappointed. When Mia was 31, she was given a diagnosis. Nothing immediately life-threatening. A chronic condition that required management. But enough to stop her completely. Enough to sit her down in a doctor's office and listen to the quiet reality that her body was not going to work the way she had assumed it would. That there were things it would no longer do easily. That the plan, such as she had one, needed adjusting. She went home from that appointment and she sat at her kitchen table for a very long time. And she felt underneath the fear and the adjustment and the grief of it, something she hadn't expected. She felt a strange clarity. Like the ordinary fog of ordinary life had briefly lifted and she could see, just for a moment, the actual shape of things. And the shape of what she saw was this. She had been becoming nothing, not because she lacked the capacity, but because she had never given herself permission to become anything at all. She had lived so carefully inside the boundaries of ordinary that she had never found out what lived outside them. She told me, I realized that I had been so afraid of failing at something big that I had preemptively failed at everything by never trying. And sitting in my kitchen with a diagnosis and a suddenly very finite sense of time, the idea of continuing that way was more frightening to me than any risk I could take. Mia started painting, not because she had any particular training, not because she had any particular confidence, because she had always wanted to. And she had always told herself that wanting was not enough reason to begin. And she finally decided that wanting was exactly enough reason to begin. She was not good at it at first. She was not good at it for quite a while. She kept going. She painted on weekends, then weekday mornings before work, then more and more of her free hours until the painting took up a room, and then 2 rooms, and she was still managing her condition and working her ordinary job, but she was no longer ordinary in the place where it matters, inside. Inside she was alive in a way she had not been before, full of something, direction, process, the daily, marvelous, terrifying reality of becoming. I saw one of her paintings last year. It was of a woman standing in a doorway, 1 foot inside and 1 foot out. Her face turned toward the light that was coming from the outside. The title of the painting was Still Becoming. Mia is 40 now. The condition is managed. The paintings are in a gallery. A small one, but a real one, with her name on the wall. She has sold 17 pieces. She has held workshops for people with chronic illness. She still works the ordinary job, but she moves through the world at a different volume now. The volume of someone who has decided that they are not finished yet. I am still becoming. That is what the mirror should see in the morning. Not a finished thing, not a failed thing, not a thing whose best years are behind it, or whose damage is permanent, or whose story has been fully written. Fully written. A thing in process, a thing in motion, a becoming thing. So here they are, 5 things. 5 truths to speak to yourself in the quiet of the morning before the world gets its voice into the day. I'm still here for the miracle of another sunrise, for the continued gift of a story that is not yet finished, for the body that kept you alive through the night and the consciousness that returned to find you still in the world with work to do and love to give and days that are still unwritten. I am not my yesterday. For the release from the accumulated weight of every failure and every falling short and every moment you would undo if you could. For the freedom to begin again, not from zero because you bring everything you've learned, but with new intention, new direction, new possibility, uncontaminated by old evidence. Someone needs what I have. For the turning outward, for the reminder that your wound is also your gift, that your specific journey has produced a specific wisdom that the world cannot get from anyone else, that your presence in the lives of the people around you matters in ways you cannot fully see and are not meant to measure. I choose today. I choose today. For the exercise of the most fundamental human freedom, the choice of your own way, your own attitude, your own direction, in whatever space remains between what the world gives you and what you do with it. For the daily reaffirmation that you are the author, not only the character, and the story goes where you take it. I am becoming. For the grace of impermanence, for the relief of not being required to be finished. For the daily permission to be better today than yesterday, and better tomorrow than today, in the small, quiet, accumulating way that produces transformation so gradual you can barely see it until the day you look back and barely recognize where you started. These are not 5 separate practices. They are one complete act. The act of starting your day as the most intentional version of yourself. The act of claiming your morning before your morning claims you. The act of speaking truth, real, specific, personal, earned truth into the most receptive moments of your own consciousness. And here is what happens when you do this. Not immediately, not dramatically, but over time, the way the tide shapes stone, slowly, patiently, irresistibly, not a story you tell yourself begins to change. The evidence you collect begins to change. Because you've been looking for evidence that confirms I am stuck, I am small, I am behind, I am broken. And the brain, brilliant and accommodating, has been finding it. But when you change the premise, when you change the morning sentence, the brain begins finding different evidence. It begins to notice the ways you are still here, still choosing, still becoming. It begins to register the moments when someone needed what you had and you provided it. It begins to see the gap between who you were yesterday and who you are today as evidence not of failure, but of motion. And motion, momentum, has its own physics. It is far easier to change the direction of something moving than to move something that has stopped. The 5 morning sentences keep you moving. They keep the engine running even on the mornings when the fuel feels low. And a moving life pointed in the right direction with the right story running in the background. That life has an almost unstoppable tendency toward meaning. I want to leave you with something. An image that I think about when the morning is hard, when even 5 sentences feel like too much. When the alarm goes off and the body is heavy and the day ahead looks gray, there is a phenomenon in nature called the dawn chorus. It happens every morning, all over the world, in every climate and every geography. In the hour before sunrise, birds begin to sing, not randomly, in layers. One species begins, then another, until by the time the sun actually appears, the air is full of this rising, complex, layered music. Scientists have studied why birds do this, and the answer is in essence this: they